In this lecture, we're going to look on to the elasticities, and specifically the elasticities of demand, the wage elasticities of demand. So if you remember back to your more basic economics courses, your microeconomics courses, you recall that elasticity is about responsiveness. And so when you talk about price elasticity of demand, it's how is the quantity demanded of the good, or how responsive is it to a change in the price of the good. The same concept can be applied to the own wage elasticity. So the own wage elasticity of demand measures how responsive is the number of workers demanded to a change in the wage. And so if we look at it here, we have the equation, which is, this is the symbol of eta, the Greek symbol. So the elasticity of labor input I to a change in wage I, so the own wage elasticity, is going to be the percentage change in the employment of that labor unit divided by the percentage change in the wage of that labor unit. Okay. So one thing I want to note here is that L and E, L for labor, E for employment, it gets used kind of interchangeably in labor economics, and it will be used, I'm going to use it before, and going forward it will be as well. But anyway, so here we have the elasticity, own wage elasticity of demand. And so what this is telling you, it's telling you is how responsive is employment demand to a change in the wage. Now if you think back to labor demand, we had that downward sloping demand curve. As wage went down, the number of workers who were demanded went up. As wage went up, the number of workers who were demanded went down. So it's always going to be negative. As wage goes up, employment goes down, and vice versa. And so for this case, we're going to look at this in terms of just absolute value. So just as looking at other elasticities, the same can be said with wage elasticity demand. And so if it's greater than 1, again in absolute terms, we say that it is elastic, right? Meaning that employment demand is very responsive to changes in wages. Okay. And so that means that if it's elastic, as wage goes up, employment is going to go down by a larger percentage. So employment demand is going to be very, very responsive to changes in wage. Now when that's the case, if wages go up, aggregate earnings, which is the wages times the number of employees, will go down because, again, it's very responsive. And so if wage goes up, those existing workers who keep their jobs are going to get a bump in pay, but the number of workers is going to go down by a larger amount. Okay, so the percentage change in employment is going to be larger than the percentage increase in wage. On the other side, if the own wage elasticity is less than 1, saying that if the wage increases, that aggregate earnings, the total amount paid out, is going to increase, right? Because here, employment's not very responsive to changes in wages. And so when that wage goes up, the percentage decrease in employment isn't going to go down by, comparatively speaking, that much. So you're going to have wage going up, and so a lot of people are getting additional money, and the number of people working isn't going to go down by as much, inelastic. If it equals 1, the aggregate earnings are going to be unchanged because the percentage change is going to be the same. Okay. And if we're talking about elastic versus inelastic, another way to look at it is also, the shape of the demand curve. So let me click this off here. So if we're looking at it here, if we have our our wage and our level of employment. And let's just say we have two demands. We have D1 and we have what does that? Oops. Try that again. All right, so we have our employment, and we have our wages, and let's say we have D1 and D2. And so let's say we go from wage 1 to wage 2. All right. And so if we look at this, we're going to have some original employment level. Now in demand 2, right, I'm going, which is more vertical, right, that wage, all right, that employment is going to go down by a little bit. But with wage 2, with wage 2, it's going to go down by more. Okay. And so if we look at this, just kind of going back to what we had here, what you're going to see is that the more vertical is, the less change or the less decrease in employment you're going to have from increasing in the wages. And so what happens is, it's the more vertical it is, the more inelastic it is. And always a good rule of thumb with that is, that's a good way to remember it, is if you look at it and you draw the line perfectly vertical, okay, which is your perfectly inelastic, which means that it's, you can change the wage from, W0 to W1, and when that's the case, it's going to go from E0, it's not going to change at all. Okay. So when that's the case, okay, that's perfectly inelastic. And what letter does that look like? That's right, it looks like the letter I. So anyway, so that's just a nice little trick way for you to remember that. So the other thing when talking about elasticity is that as you move to different points on the demand curve, it becomes more elastic. So as you move up your demand curve, and when I say up, I mean moving up in wage, okay, the elasticity becomes higher and higher. And so if you remember back to your principles course, the midpoint, that's where the elasticity equals 1. Anywhere above it, it's greater. Anywhere below it, it's less. And so if we look back here, I just have an example here of a demand curve, which is graphed over here. And so if you do the wage elasticity, which, if you remember, the wage elasticity is the percentage change in employment divided by the percentage change in the wage. Now, it doesn't matter if you do the midpoint or the point-to-point method. Either way works. So let's just say that, and let's start here. So the change of employment, all right, so when you go from a wage of $5 to $10, employment goes from 90 to 80. So the percentage change in employment is going to be 80 minus 90. So we need, oops. Let's do this better and actually. Okay. So it's going to be 80 minus 90. So that's going to be your actual change. To get the percentage change, just subtract it by, or just divide it by the original. Right. So there's your percentage change in employment, and your percentage change in the wage is going to be old minus new, or sorry, new minus old divided by old. So what does it go up by percentage-wise? And so you have, let me see, I'm missing something here, I think. Let's see. Yeah, that goes there. There. And so it's going to be $10 minus $5 divided by your $5. And let's see if that works. So let's see where I messed up here. I think I'm missing a. And there it is. There we go. So here at this point, the elasticity as you move from $5 to $10 is minus 0.1. Right? And that's this point from $5 to $10. It's this area down here. Let's go to the next one as you go from 10 to 15, which is from here to here. You can see as absolute terms, it goes up and up and up, and it's going to keep going up. All right. Now, and you'll see that right around the midpoint, and it's around the midpoint because we're not doing the exact point, we're doing from point to point. The elasticity is going to be 1, right around the midpoint. Okay. So this is just looking at how to calculate the elasticity, the own wage elasticity, and the ideas of elastic own wage versus inelastic.